So
we support them on one front, and at the same time, in another way, we are publicly critical of not giving rights to women, and so it's two-sided, right?
Well, we are, but we are more critical now as a result of terrorism that we were before. Before, we were just supporting Egypt. We were just supporting Saudi Arabia and other countries, financially supporting Egypt to a very large degree, and being allies to all these other countries. So that's one problem. But there are other problems also. The other problems include some of our activities. For example, in Iraq, we supported Saddam Hussein, a very repressive and violent dictator.
We know the picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein.
That's right. But then after Kuwait, we turned against Saddam Hussein. We had the first Iraq war, and then we continued with sanctions that created great harm to the Iraqi people. Not to Saddam Hussein as such, but to the Iraqi people.
Moving them back technologically 50 years, is that too? I mean, many years we moved them backwards.
And depriving children of medicine and all kinds of other things, and resulting in a lot of death. And people in our country on the right were saying, well, it's not our fault, it's Saddam Hussein's fault because of the things that he's doing. But we were the one who maintained these sanctions, and that's one of the reasons that people are so angry. Just now, very recently, you heard about this man who blew up a number of CIA officials,
right.
A Jordanian, who first acted as if he was an agent for Jordan, but then clearly he was a double agent, and he blew up a number of CIA people. And his wife said that when the United States invaded Iraq, and in the course of that invasion, a lot of civilians, everyday people, were killed.
No question about it.
And we heard very little about it because of the way our media has been operating during the Iraq war. But according to his wife, that turned him. He got tremendously identified with these people who, as a result of our invasion, were suffering. The civilians, the innocent people who were suffering that. And that was, according to her, the time when he really shifted toward jihadi causes. So I think it's fair to say that both of those things, at the very least, have been involved.
To remind our audience, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Ervin Staub, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts down the road from us. To shift gears a little bit, you were called as an expert witness in the Abu Ghraib case in 2005. Is that right?
I don't remember the year, but yes, I was called as an expert witness. Yes.
Well, number one, how did they find you?
Well, I have done this kind of work in relation to violence by groups for a very long time, and so they must have found me through my past work.
And to what extent did they want to talk to you? Meaning, who were you testifying for? Was it for which side? And what kind of questions did they ask you?
I was testifying for one of the defendants. And the reason I agreed to testify, by the way, was because the whole focus was on these bad guys.
These bad U.S. troops.
These bad particular U.S. guards,
right.
U.S. soldiers, military police who became guards at Abu Ghraib, and as if it was just these individuals. But as many people have said, and I very much believe, it is the system that was created around them that had a tremendous influence. And this system included, well, anyway, how I got involved was I was asked by the defense attorneys. There was a civilian defense attorney and there was a military defense attorney. And they worked together and they asked me to be a defense witness. And so I agreed, and I prepared the case, and I developed some materials, and then I testified in front of the military jury and the judge, and of course the prosecutors and the defense witnesses. And basically I was describing the system that existed there. And that system included superior officers who saw all kinds of things going on and said nothing and did nothing. Now, when there are no rules that are maintained in a system where there are people in power and others over whom these people have power, then that tends to develop into greater use of power and force by those who have power.
And there is a difference between superiors seeing what's going on and saying nothing compared to instructing to do some of the things that they're seeing, right? There is a difference.
Yes, but both have happened.
Both have happened.
On the one hand, they were seeing the guards keeping prisoners naked in their cells,
right,
which is an abusive itself,
yes,
and just passing by, not doing anything. But on the other hand, Rumsfeld has given permission to use certain kinds of very severe interrogation techniques in Guantanamo.
Right.
And these techniques then shifted over, as some of the personnel moved over to Abu Ghraib, shifted over to Abu Ghraib. And they were using these very severe techniques for interrogation. And the interrogators were asking the guards to soften up the prisoners for the interrogation.
Right.
So the combination of some of these actual instructions and influences and the laxness of the system, and there were also a couple other elements. For example, there were rocket attacks on the prison.
Right.
And there were some prison riots. And these were frustrating for the guards. So these three things, the frustration of the guards, or four, their lack of training, they weren't trained to be military prison guards, the lax supervision, the lack of rules established by higher officers, and then this actual guidance to soften up the prisoners all combined, making it a very forceful set of circumstances.
And these factors, you're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not saying that they're completely exculpatory, but they may be mitigating factors when thinking about the sentence, right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And you're not saying that they should have received no punishment because of this situation that was created.
No, I am not saying that. But what I am saying is, the thing is, there are very powerful forces often working on people who then engage in violence.
Right.
They still have choices. The fact that there are those forces doesn't excuse their behavior. But it's very important to look at those conditions.
Oh, we have a cell phone going off. That's, bad radio etiquette, right?
How do you turn this off?
Yeah, I wonder the same thing myself. It's a good song, though.
It is going to stop in a second.
I
should have turned it off. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There we go. Oh, it's back on. There. That was the final chime. No problem. We've been speaking with Ervin Staub, professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
We will take a break, and then we will be back with more after this on Midweek Politics. This episode of Midweek Politics has been made possible in part by Just Coffee Cooperative, fair trade coffee from around the world roasted daily at justcoffee.coop.